This video is a little bit different because what I'm doing is something that I haven't done in a long while. I've been doing a lot of videos with digital art, but I haven't done a lot lately, not for a while, with traditional mediums. And this is just a pencil sketch in my notebook, and I guess I'm trying to start with this as a kind of exercise or a dry run, if you will, just to see what I can do to improve and bring better quality videos. So this one is going to be some improvements with the lighting, and of course because you see the shadows and so forth. I don't have the proper lighting. I you know what, you can see the drawing develop, but if I were to do this over again, and I will make more videos like this. I'll change the lighting. I'll make sure that there's a better setup and so forth. But this was fun to do, just for that, just for to see if I can do these things. I work in a lot of digital stuff now, but I do prefer to work in traditional mediums. Just personally, I get a great deal of satisfaction from drawing and painting in traditional media, and observing things, and drawing, or even drawing from my imagination. But I'm right now, for the most part, I can it's easier to do the traditional stuff. But here we are. I'm starting this now, this drawing now, and like I do the traditional work, all I'm doing is finding things here. This is just the beginning of the drawing, and it's time to just organize the drawing. Organize, the where everything fits. I organize the arrangement of the light and the dark, and so forth. And also, what I'm doing is I'm organizing things, and I'm thinking what I can leave out. I'm thinking what is necessary to leave in, and what can I leave out, because I want to right now, especially in the beginnings, I want to generalize. I want to go from the big to the little, and I don't want to go about crossing every T and dotting every I and so forth. So I just want to be able to figure out how I can present a more powerful image, not with details, because I think that for me the details kind of dazzle people. The details kind of like saying, "Oh wow," and those are the things that get the remarks of it looks just like a photo, which is which most people mean as a compliment, but is not really so. Because I mean, you want it to stand alone as a drawing, as a piece of art, not as a copy from a photograph or so forth. Because if you wanted that, then you could just live with the photograph. A drawing and a painting offer you something more than what a photograph gives you. And I'm not saying that drawing and painting is better than photography. There's wonderful photography that gets done, and I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that there's something different in every medium. Just like there's something different in watercolors and oils, just like there's something different in pastels. And it's like, why do you use a different medium? Because you get a different look, you get a different feel, you get something that comes across as different. So I want to make my drawing look like a drawing, not look like a photograph. I want to make my paintings look like a painting, not look like a photograph. And it's funny because when I do digital stuff, when I do things digitally, I want my paintings and drawings that I do digitally not to look like a digital painting or drawing. I want it to look like a traditional painting or drawing, like it's done in. There's a reason why I like a Rebelle so much, because it looks like it's done in acrylic, or it looks like it's done in watercolor, or whatever, because the program mimics the traditional tools so well. So though, you know what, I right now drawing with the traditional tools, what I don't want this to do is look like it's just a copy of a photograph. I want to pick the areas or the parts that I think are important to tell what I want. They give a kind of structure to the head. They give a kind of character to the person. That what I can pick apart from the reference material is what I want to do. And even if I weren't using a photo, if I were drawing from life, there's still a lot of ways that you can render endlessly, and that's one of the things that I remembered painting in an art class at the Art Students League and under Erwin Greenberg, and he looked at my watercolor. He says, "Oh, you love to render." And you know what? The thing is that his it's kind of like I was rendering too fast. I was trying to get to a finish, and so he helped me to bring it back to the general, bring it back to the big shapes and so forth, and then break those big shapes down into smaller shapes and smaller shapes till you arrive at the detail. But the detail is not what you go for first. It's these big shapes, these patterns of light and dark that I'm trying to develop, and not so much the lines. The lines are just there as an indication of where things stop and start. But I am, and what is the envelope, or what just what the outlines of the volumes, the outlines of the big shapes of the head and so forth. That's all it is. I can decide which are too harsh or and which I need to soften, and which I need to what I need to do with those. But the story that's being told is basically being told in the large volumes of light and dark. So from the beginning, that's what I'm breaking my drawing down to. So I'm worried about, this is the thing, I'm organizing. I'm worried about where it fits on the page. I'm worried about light and shadow, and I'm concerned about proportions. Those are the things that I'm thinking about in the beginning of the drawing. All those things, you don't wait till the end, but you start with generalizations. You start with these big shapes, and then you work your way to the smaller shapes. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm working, one of the things that I'm learning, I'm working at a disadvantage here, because my drawing is lying flat on a paper, and I don't see, and I'm not able to see till much later that some of the corrections that I need to make in developing this, and developing this drawing. But it was pretty good to start, and it was and I could make whatever corrections later on. I'm not getting especially right now, nothing. You're trying to arrive at, or in the beginning, you're trying to make as best as you can all the right decisions, so that you can make less and less big changes at the end, which which is what you want to shoot for. You want to make sure you get all the shapes right, you get the proportions right, you get all these things right, so that the details will take care of themselves if you take care of these things first. So, but like I said, I'm drawing from a photograph. It's very, very different from drawing from life. I think drawing from life is a lot better. Photographs do a number of things. There are things that you can observe. Photograph will and before I talk about what you observe, photograph can distort things from in terms of the perspective and so forth, and depending on how close you were to or the camera was to the figure, it would change some things. And also photographs tend to, like, what you see, how you perceive the world when you go outside. If you see dark areas, if you look at it long enough, you'll see transparency. You'll see variations. You'll see, in the darkness and in the warmth or cool of the color and so forth. You'll see different things, whereas the photograph tends to take all of that and make it just a solid dark. So you're missing certain things there that you can observe, and that is especially important when it comes to painting. So when you're out in nature or you're observing things, you're able to pick up things, and then you know what? The camera, once the camera takes the picture, it has made a lot of decisions for you. When you're working from life, you're making all the decisions. You don't have to be a camera. You can be selective. You can, even when you're working from a photograph, like I'm being selective. I'm not taking it all in. I'm taking what I believe it's important, and working from and developing that in the drawing. But when you're working from nature and it's your eye observing things, you can take the place of that camera, but you have instead of just point and shoot, you're actually thinking more or less like the photographer, and not like a what do you would call someone who just taking snapshots and so forth. You're thinking about how am I going to composition. You're thinking about so many different things in terms of drawing, that you're able to make decisions on what you want to put down on the canvas, what you want to put down on the paper, and so forth, so that it's your interpretation of nature, the way you perceive things, what you see, and it's interesting to take a look at some of the drawings that you've done that I've done from years past, and see what I didn't know then and what I know now. And I know that that's also going to be different 10, 4, 5, 3 years from now, where, I may, through constant practice and discipline and focusing, I can see where the artwork grows. There was a period in my life where I just stopped painting and drawing. I guess I was asking myself a lot as why am I doing this? What's the point of this? And so forth. And I needed to answer those questions for myself. Then I began to start picking it up again after not painting for a while and so forth. It was something that I missed, something that I felt like I needed to do. It's my way of viewing the world and putting it down and not just documenting it, but communicating the things that I see, not in words but in pictures. So I wanted to paint again. It was kind of it's the way I think, and it's the way I've been I don't know, wired to think or whatever, and that I like making these pictures. I like making these drawings because it's my way of communicating. Or even if I'm making a note to myself, every one of these drawings that I make is kind of like a journal. It's my thinking at the time. It's what I thought, what I felt, what I wanted to do, whether it's serious or whimsical or whatever, or even just silly. It is part of me, part of what I'm communicating, part of what I'm thinking, and so forth. So, I gave it up for a while. I kind of lost my train of thought there. I gave it up for a while, but I started again, and then it's like a period of growing, a period of not being used to the tools, not being used to observing, but keeping at it just because I had to do it. And that I see now, looking back, my how different my work looked from a few years ago. when I started drawing again and so forth. And even what I thought were accomplishments now were nothing when I look back at it. Where I look, and it's not bad, because you can look at your work at some point and see that you've accomplished a lot, and that's the best that you can do at that time. And then you go for a year or two, and then you look back and you have some different thoughts, and you realize that you've grown from that point, and there's a new best that you can do at the time. And that's always going to happen, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing when you can look back at your work and say, you know what, I'm better now. And it doesn't diminish what you've done. It just helps. It helps reinforce what discipline and just the willingness to stick to the things, can stick to a regimen, stick to training, stick to focusing on your art and not giving up, what it can do and how much it can change. And but that's through constant practice and so forth. But what I said before, and what I wanted to get into before I got sidetracked myself into that, I was talking about I'm working on a photograph. I pretty much enjoy much more working from life, and this is one of the benefits of working from life. I had a discussion with my wife, because my wife is into Buddhist meditation. She likes that. She often meditates, and she focuses, and she tells me what meditation is like, and she tries to get me involved and so forth. And I had resisted for so long. I just it's just not my thing. I whatever. Not that I haven't done any meditation and so forth. Of course I've had, but I've done it without knowing what I was doing, because one of the things is, and I had an instructor who talked about this. He said that, when you work from life, when you work outdoors from life, and you start painting for a while outdoors, and you really focus on what you're doing, after you're done, it's like the world has changed. After you're done, everywhere you look, you see picture possibilities. You see where, I may have come, like I went to the park, and with my watercolors and my sketch pad and so forth, and I had trouble looking for something to paint. I had trouble looking for something interesting, and when I zeroed in on something, I don't know if I fully gave into the idea that this will make a great picture or not. I just simply had to start somewhere. But after spending hours of focusing, after spending hours of drawing this thing and solving problems, and really, really concentrating on what I was doing, I found that what he said was true. The world did change. I found that after that, I saw picture possibilities in everything, which is one of the things he described. There's like so many possibilities, or so many things that can become paintings. It's got everywhere you turn your head, so it gives you a different perspective on your life. And when I described that to my wife, she said that's exactly what meditation does. Meditation, you go away, or you kind of focus on whatever you focus on. I think with her, she told me it's like breathing techniques and so forth, and you clear your mind. And then what it is afterwards, it helps change your perspective. It helps. You find that you've changed in some way from clearing your mind and focusing and so forth. But in the painting, in doing these paintings outdoors, I'm focusing on solving problems. I'm focusing on the drawings, the proportions. I'm focusing on the light. I'm focusing on color, the warm and the cool colors and so forth, and then the use of my tools and all of that, and I'm focusing on these things. So I'm concentrating on it, and then my mind rarely wanders from that. I rarely go into a thought about anything else because I'm so focused on what I'm doing. So she described that that's a lot what meditation is like. Sometimes you meditate, you focus on one thing, or you focus on your breathing, or you try to focus on an object or so forth, and block everything else from your mind. So I was so focused on what I was doing and solving the problems that are before me, that what I did was I just simply blocked everything else out. And when I was done, the world changed. Now it doesn't last, but the more you do it, the more it will last. And that's a benefit of drawing from life that you don't get from drawing from a photograph. You don't get from using reference. And I'm using reference here, so I'm not saying didn't never do that. It's useful. The camera becomes a useful tool, but what it takes you away from is the experience of painting. And I really think like painting is an experience. Even we look at now, there's so many images and images on the internet, images in books that reproduce much better than they did a long time ago. But one of the things that they cannot do is give you the physical presence of the painting. If you go to see Rembrandt's Night Watch, okay, and that's something I haven't gone to, so if I can make another comparison, there was a painting by the Spanish artist Sorolla, where these women seemed like they were in some kind of grassy area, garden, whatever, and they were mending sails, and that's what I believe that's what the painting was called, Mending Sails, and it was a huge painting. It was brilliant brushwork, catching the sunlight, hinting on different things. This white sail, but the thing is that it wasn't white. It was all these different colors that bounce onto that white. So what happens is that it was when I walked into the gallery and I saw this painting, it was incredible. It was an experience. It was like, wow, just seeing the brushstrokes and the color and just what he did and the size of it, the impact of the size of the painting. Now when you see it reproduced in the book, it still looks wonderful, but it doesn't have that same impact. So what painting and drawing is an experience, from the creation of it to just experiencing it when you go to a gallery or museum. It's not the same thing. So and it doesn't have to be big. I remember going to many years ago when I was an art student and I was a teen, and there was a show at the Metropolitan Museum of Art of Leonardo's sketches. They were just sketches from his sketchbook pages and so forth, and his drawing, and there were other drawings there too. And I've always seen them in books. I'm in New York, so a lot of them are scattered all over the place in different parts of the world. I believe these came from the collection they had at in England, but they brought it here for that exhibit, and the experience of seeing these drawings, they weren't very big. They were very, very small, tiny drawings, some of them, but the being able to see the drawings on the paper and the delicate line work and so forth was different from seeing it in a book, regardless of how good the reproductions were. They never equaled the original. They never equaled the real thing. So it was an experience to go see these things, and it was small in size. They weren't big like the painting, like the Sorolla painting. So it's an experience. So one of the other things when I was talking about the idea of meditation and so forth. I remember when I was in college, and this was before I married my wife, and we talked about meditation and so forth. There was an assignment that was due for class. It was a I don't remember what the concept was, the idea of it, but I drew a man with a computer head, and he was looking at a Rembrandt painting in a museum. And one of the details in the painting was that the guy was, his head, which was a monitor, had this wire coming out, and the wire curling around and going off the page and so forth. And it was wasn't a big sheet of paper, but it was a decent sized sheet of paper, so that I had to make this line and make it consistent, and make it look like what I intended it to be. Now, I was wondering how I was going to do this, especially the way it was curling up and so forth, how I was not going to make it look like a mess. So at the time, I watched a lot of PBS, and there was a special came on. I forgot what it was, but this man who was in Japan, and he did he did calligraphy, and he talked about how he was well known for it. He was a master at it, and he talked about how what he would do was, before he started to put a single stroke down, he spent time meditating. He spent time thinking about the stroke. He spent time thinking about what he was going to do, and how he was going to finish, and so forth. So everything was done in his brain long before it was placed on paper, because he spent a large amount of time meditating on the brushstroke, meditating on what he was going to do physically. And so when he finally picked up the brush and went to paper, it came out exactly as he saw it in his mind. So what I did for that project was, I said, well, you know what, let me try that. Let me spend some time meditating and thinking and so forth. And this is just on the spur, and I'm not practice at this or anything, but I spent some time. I spent some time thinking about the line I was going to make, and I really focused on that. And I spent I can't even recall because it was so long ago. But I spent a huge. What I'm saying is, I can't recall how long, but it was a huge amount of time, focused, drawing, and thinking about how I was going to do that line, so that when I finally set to do the illustration, I did the line, it came out exactly the way I wanted it to. So so much so that I went to class and presented my project for critique, and we all put our works on the wall, so that the students can look at it, the instructor can look at it, and talk about it. And so I talked about my, when my turn came, talked about my concept, what I was doing, what I was, how I was applying the general concept that the instructor gave us to illustrate. And so after that, the questions were coming in on what I was doing and what medium I used and so forth. And then the question that came up was, how did you get that line? So it was something that didn't go unnoticed. It was something that the other students saw, and the instructor actually was the instructor who asked me, how did I get that line? Excuse me. And at the time, I didn't know how to explain the meditation stuff. So I said, I just thought about it for a long time, and then I did it. And that was it. And I attributed it to luck, which it wasn't luck. It was meditating on it and thinking about it and working it through, in order for me to get that line like that. So, I'm just saying that when you're drawing from life, whatever discipline you need, whatever you need to get it done. I'm not saying that I meditate every time I draw, because I don't. But when I'm focused on drawing, when I'm focused on painting, and especially from life, it becomes meditation. It becomes where I'm focused on something, and when I'm done, my perspective on the world changes. And that is especially true from drawing from life. That it's different. And it's harder, it's easier for me to do that in solitude. It's easier for me to do that in a park where it's just me. One of the things that I get caught up in is when I'm in a room full of people, and we're all drawing from the model and so forth. You've been through classes like that. Different group meetings and so forth. So you're doing this in a group. I'm doing it in a group, and the feeling is different, because I'm all of a sudden I'm self-conscious and aware of the people around me, and there's something that I've always needed to let go, that I haven't, and that is the idea that when someone looks at my painting or my drawing, they're gonna say, "Gosh, that sucks," that's a terrible drawing and so forth, and that's one of the things that painting in a group makes me feel self-conscious, and it's something that I have to learn to let go of and focus on what I'm doing, because I'm cheating myself of the experience. And you know what? I don't think many people are thinking that way, that your drawing sucks, because I think a lot of people struggle through drawing and so forth. But it's much easier for me to focus and to meditate in solitude, to meditate and to get these things done. And it becomes less of a personal experience like that when I'm in a group. But like I say, it's something that I have to get away from. It's something that I need to be able to, whether there's a ton of people around me or whether there's nobody around me, be able to focus on what I'm doing to accomplish the drawing or the painting. Now at this point, I've let this video go without speeding it up. Usually I speed up my videos, but I wanted to be able to say something as I let this video play. And you see how I'm still, even though I've gotten some details done, I'm still trying to get back to big shapes and silhouettes, and that especially that part of the head, which is mostly in dark. The whole left side of the drawing is mostly in shadow. So I'm trying to generalize that as much as possible, and not worry about so many details. But at the same time, I leave room for some variations here and there, to help indicate some of the jawline and so forth. But just so the cheek, but just slightly. But I have still a long way to go in making those generalizations. So anyway, that's my experience of painting and drawing, focusing, meditation, and it makes, like I said, it's not just viewing the work, but when you're creating the work, it's an experience. And that's what drawing from life gives you. It gives you an experience that can alter the way you think. That if you're focused, if you're concentrated, it can alter the way you think. So what I'm going to do is, there's still more of this video left. I'm going to speed it up at this point, and just to get towards the end of this video and the result of the finished drawing. All right, so about this time, I'm seeing that laying it flat, all this time laying this sketchbook flat, has thrown my perspective off a little bit, so that I haven't really got the shape of the head the way it's supposed to be. Now, probably because this is more of a profile, that I'm not worried. It doesn't throw the axis of the eyes, the nose, and so forth off, because there's only half of a face to draw. So luckily that didn't affect that, because those would be major changes. It really had to do with just the shape of her head, and just making sure that it's proportionate, it's right. So when I hold it up and I'm looking at the drawing straight on, that helps me to see the drawing as it sits on the whole page, and to better better grasp the shape of the head, or I can understand how, my drawing a lot better. So which is a lesson learned. I think when I'm going ahead and doing something like this again, I'm going to do it on a board on a tilt, so that I'm not laying the drawing flat. And the only reason why I did that is because of the position of the camera. It's like I'm actually drawing around the camera, because the camera's arm is in front of me, and in order for me to do this without blocking the viewer's eye, where my hand or the pencil would cover exactly where I'm working on, and the changes that are affected by the stroke of the pencil and so forth. But it would be harder to see, because your view would be obscured by my hand, and being in the way. It's not at a proper viewing angle. So next time, I'll just use a board, and I'll tilt that board, and be able to see these things, and keep everything within the proper angle, so that I can make this drawing correctly. But anyway, so I had to prop it up. That helps me better to see the painting. And it's always a good idea to view your painting this way. When you paint, or drawing this way, I'm sorry. But when you paint, it's usually when you paint, you're painting on an easel. It's not lying flat on the table. Or if you're doing something that's lying flat on a table, you're standing over it, so you can view the entire page at once, in at the right perspective. Here I'm laying it flat, and I'm viewing it from the bottom up. So the perspective is kind of skewed, and because of that, the proportions would be off. And that's why drawing like this is making it much easier. All right, so here's the finished drawing. And as I'm putting this video up, please let me know what you think about it. Give me some kind of feedback. What do you think? I know it's not digital like I'm usually doing, but it's traditional media, and I would love to do more of this stuff, and including the digital. I wouldn't stop doing the digital's work, but it gives a different different view, different medium, different way of communicating, but basically same method. If you looked at my approach here with this pencil drawing, it is really no different to my approach doing digital work. It's the same thing, just a different medium. So anyway, again, let me know what you think. Give me your comments. I'd love some feedback, of what you think about the video, and if it was helpful, and so forth. If you found my rant useful. All right. So thanks, and until next video, see you later. Bye-bye.